All right. Hello and welcome, everyone. This is Nick Klosky with Honeypoint 3D, and I am very happy to bring you the September 2017 monthly 3D printing and 3D design webinar. I am, again, Nick Klosky. I'm co-founder of Honeypoint 3D, and I welcome everybody who is joining live today, as well as the people who watch this on our YouTube channel on replay. Now, last month I had to cancel the webinar because I had kind of a hacking cough, and I'm still getting over that. So I want to upfront apologize if I cough or if I sound a little hoarse. I have water, I have cough drops here, so I apologize if I have to mute and cough and all that, but at least I am on video and not in person. Actually, I'm not contagious, it's just a lingering cough. As always, I really ask that if you have any questions, that you use the little chat feature here to ask me questions you might have about 3D printing, 3D design, Meshmixer, Fusion 360, really any workflow questions that you have about 3D printing or really just, getting things done with, 3D design and fabrication. A little bit, as I always do, about Honeypoint 3D. We help create 3D models. Half of our business is engineering services, where we have very talented mechanical and organic engineers who can create models for you. A lot of those engineers have extensive experience in design for manufacturing, production methods, all of that. So we will help create a 3D model for you through that service. The other side of our business is what we have right now, is helping people learn the tools themselves to create 3D models, to do what they need to do to start or jumpstart their small businesses or medium or large businesses. We just want to help create 3D models. We do that in a few different ways. We have online classes on Meshmixer, on Fusion 360, and we're actually coming out with some more classes I'll talk about maybe next month in the webinar. One of the big news here is that our classes recently were picked up by lynda.com, and lynda.com is now owned by LinkedIn. So if you have a premium LinkedIn membership, where it's the premium one, you actually get access to all of the lynda.com classes, and our Fusion class and our Meshmixer class are on that platform. They're kind of called different things. They're called Meshmixer Essentials and Fusion 360 Essentials, and they're in kind of a different configuration as they are in our website, because they wanted them chopped up in a different way, but they are on there. One note of warning, though, is that there are some pieces that are missing on the LinkedIn Lynda website, specifically for Meshmixer, for the reference section, where our videos have 2 to 5 minute descriptions of every single feature in every menu, every sub menu. We have that for the Fusion class on LinkedIn Lynda, but we do not have that for Meshmixer on that platform. If you go to honeypoint3d.com and go to our education, we have it all on there, but they decided not to have that reference section yet. So that's kind of the only difference between those. But if you have a premium account on LinkedIn, then you will have access to those services, or that awesome repository, as well as everything else out there. If you also have any suggestions for classes you would like me to come out with, I'd be more than happy to listen to that. So please email me. My email address is very easy. It's just Nick, N-I-C-K, at honeypoint3d.com. Now, the people online, if you do have any questions about how to get some certain things done with Meshmixer or Fusion, I would be, sorry, there's a call coming in, be more than happy to answer those. We do have a couple of questions, though, that I would like to kind of talk about that did come up in the previous month. So come up with your questions and ask them, but I'm going to jump into answering my first question now, which was a Meshmixer question. There we go. So this Meshmixer question was kind of interesting, and one that I actually deal with quite a bit, is how to align separate parts. So I'm going to kind of take this part of the bunny right here, and rotate this and move it, and generally kind of totally mess it up in terms of like where it is in 3D space. Now, a lot of times it's kind of very difficult to put things back together, but I want to show some kind of tips and tricks on how to do some alignment when you have meshes that are in different places. Oh, actually, I'm not sharing my screen yet, but I will. The reason why this came up is we got a question about 3D scanning. Is that sometimes when you 3D scan things, the 3D scanning software will create different kind of shells, right? And it's the job of the software, whether it's fancy software from the scanner or something like MeshLab or whatever, to when you scan something, is that the skins are supposed to be nice and flat like this, but sometimes the skins are kind of up, and no matter how you're scanning it or post-processing it, those skins are not aligned. I mean, that they should be kind of blended in like this, but they're not. They're kind of off. So how to get those down and perfectly centered on each other, that's what we're going to go into in the first right here. So that is not that. Screen share. There we go. Let me just undo all of that so that I can actually show you where I started. So this is Meshmixer. We just have the default bunny inside of here. I am going to select an area on here, hit Y for separate, and transform it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate this in like all different ways. This would be a very bad scan if you got this. But we want to figure out how to get this back in the right place in the bunny. Now, you certainly could eyeball it, but a lot of times your coordinate system is off. Like when you're trying to rotate this, you kind of like try to put it down there, and you can kind of get it there a little bit. But you see I'm in the local. If I switch to world, I might be able to kind of get it in there. It just takes a long time to try to figure out how to do this. And a lot of this is because of this rotation system, is that even with world right here, the W, or L for local, your rotation systems are kind of off. So you say that, I want to rotate this down, right? I'm looking at this bunny like this, and I want to rotate this clockwise. But you see, I'm not given the option of clockwise. It's only clockwise from this vantage point, but it's not working. If I go world, I get that right? Let's mess up the world to make this a little bit harder. Okay, so now with this, okay, right here, I try to do it and world doesn't work, right? It's kind of going into the wrong place. So the trick here is that you kind of want to orient it vaguely in the right way, but you don't even really have to do that. What you want to do is, this is all about pivots. So I'm going to go on the bunny, and I'm going to go to Edit to create pivot right here. And the trick to this is that no matter where the bunny is in, let me show grid. No matter where it is, if it's on the grid, if it's turned, if it's weird, you can use this trick right here. Say surface point eye ray frame. So what this does, if I just click, I'm not actually putting a pivot, but you can see as I click and rotate, this pivot, this green line is pointing up. But what this really means is that wherever I click, that green line is pointing right towards me or you right now. As I rotate around, you can see that it was pointing right where I was looking. So you can kind of use that. You can say, well, I don't really know where the bunny is oriented, but like right here on the back, I'm going to try to get as straight up as I can. And another trick with this is to make sure that just snap is turned on. So what that does is it will snap right there, bam, to the top. So what I'm going to do when I double click right now is I have created, you can kind of see a little bit here on the right hand side, this green line is facing absolutely up. Now that is not up to where the bunny is, it is up to the grid right here. So that's great. And I'm going to go the same thing for this piece and switch over here to this part and do the same thing, move right over it, double click right on the back, go to edit to create pivot, surface point, eye, ray frame, and link to target is very important to have, and double click. Awesome. So now we have two pivots right here. You can also list the pivots if you look down in the right by clicking on this little thing. These are pivots, so you can name them and all of that. So you can drag, if you're just clicking and dragging, you can drag pivot to pivot. So now those two things are absolutely matched, right? Those pivots are right on top of each other. The bunny is not right yet, but we'll get to that. If we click on this bunny part right here now, and we click on T for transform, you can see that the center of where this is moving is the center of this object. But that's not what we want. We don't want to rotate it around the center. What we can actually do is click on this pivot, and now this object is pivoting around that pivot point. So now we're up here, and you can see that because this is an eye ray frame and I'm still on snapping, I can use this as a way of rotating this object much more accurately than I was able to before. And I'm not saying that I did this, perfectly accurately, but it's a lot easier to move this now than it was before. And then once you get close, there are other tools inside of Meshmixer you can use to really align this. But this is a darn sight better than I was able to do before, because of that kind of rotation of center of rotation type of thing. And now you notice that the pivot point is actually becoming a little liability because I'm not able to rotate it from the right place. I can always go and just create another pivot. Create pivot right here and say I want it right there on the bunny, and hit T for transform, and then click on that pivot. And now I'm pivoting it from right there, or transforming it from right there. Like that. And I've got it most of the way there, right? I can use some other tools now to do some bridging if I wanted to really bring that in, or if I want to be kind of methodical about this, I can select both of these, hit combine. That's pretty good. And then click one side, click the other side, go edit to bridge. It's created a little bridge there, as you can see. And then one of my favorite tools for this is to go in with the robust smooth tool with refinement turned up and reduction turned up. And watch this magic. I love this. Is that this is kind of zippering those two edges together. You can kind of see they're broken, but the robust smooth is joining those two together. I might want to make this a little bit smaller up here. It's a little bit more curved right here, so the tool has to think a little bit more on that, but it's going there. But it's doing it. In this, you want to make sure that your brush is not too small to not jump that gap. So you want to make your brush larger than kind of that gap between the two sides. and it's just kind of zippering those two up like that. Now if we look in the inspector, there's one tiny hole that we just fixed. There's some issues right there, but we can do smoothing in a couple different ways. Actually, a good way to get rid of this ridge is maybe just to select it, delete it, and fill it. Kind of nice. And then we can go back to the smooth tool to really smooth that out. Like that. And it's pretty much back to where it was. Yeah. So we have some questions from Juliana. Hello there. Do you have to do something to tell Meshmixer not to obey the first set of pivot matching? Not to obey the first set of pivots. No, it's really just clicking on the pivot itself that activates it for the transform tool. I don't think that you can switch off of it. You need to actually accept or cancel the tool and then go back on. If that's not what you're asking, then ask it in a different way. But you didn't realize that the robust smooth could jump across two parts. They're separated now. No, so let me go back into Meshmixer here. Yeah, so if we have something like this that I have separated out, and I'll transform it a tiny bit away. Excuse me. And then I will bring that back into the bunny. Okay, so now we have a, let me turn, there we go, and turn off the grid. Okay, so right now this is completely disconnected. If I try to go in with the robust smooth tool on both of these, it doesn't do anything. It just robust smooths this side, and actually looks like it hit the other side as well. So the way that I did this is, I selected one side and selected another, and then I went to edit and bridge, and now, now that this guy has a start right there, if we turn on wireframe, now that it's a start of a connection there, then the robust smooth tool will go do its little zipper thing, like that. Yeah, so the robust smooth tool is, and actually, I can even show you this way. If I go back here, it's not just the robust smooth tool. It's really any tool. If you go to draw like this, right? So draw creates volume, right? But you see the draw tool is zippering that up as well. If you turn down the strength to 0, but refinement and reduction is still on, oh, it actually doesn't. Maybe just like strength of 1. It'll actually start to do it, but you can see that it's also adding volume at the same time. So really all of the tools will do this if refine and reduction is on. That's what it does, is it kind of fixes that gap in there. It's just that right now it's doing it while it's creating volume. If I held on the control key, right, that is, let me turn up the strength, that is undrawing, right? It's going away from you. You could do the same thing. You could undraw at the same time as zippering, and you're creating kind of a canyon right there. But usually when you're doing this, you kind of want to do one thing at a time. So that's why I do the robust smooth tool, is because it kind of averages out the ups and downs around the tool. So it's a really good way of just kind of zippering that without changing the geometry too egregiously. If that makes sense. Long story short is that using pivots is really powerful, and it's the pivots with the I-ray frame. I actually had quite a few questions, probably 1 or 2 questions per month from people about how to do proper rotation of objects inside of Meshmixer, because those the kind of transform widget is not oriented properly for people. It's like you want to turn it this way and this way, but the transform widget is like off at this, and it's really hard to get it, something facing this way, because you have to kind of go down and then around and then up. If you just had a transform widget that just went like this and then down, it'd be a lot easier. And the way to do that is with that eye-ray frame. That is the kind of key to getting the transform widget to go in the proper direction. Good. So I hope that answered the question. That question was from Chris. Chris this last month. So hopefully that helps you, Chris. Excuse me. I just also want to show is that we got a question, unfortunately, that I'm not going to be able to answer. Let me show you the thing here. So let me go into Thingiverse. I'm not sure if it's still on the front page or not. It is not. There we go. So the question is how to use any tool, right? This would be either Fusion or Meshmixer or really anything to get these repeating patterns on an arbitrary shape. Now this is for some reason taking its time to come up right now. Make sure I'm copying this, but you can kind of see here. Let's wait for this to come up, but I can zoom in a little bit. But you see these patterns on the shells. These are repeating patterns that, from this one starts in one place and then cascades down. It looks like actually all of these are, there we go. Yeah, it looks like a lot of these are maybe centered right on the top and then down. The question is how to do that. The answer, if I come back here, the answer is with Fusion 360 or with Meshmixer, you can't. I'm pretty darn certain that you can't. You can, but not in any sort of automated way. It's actually very, very difficult to do that inside of those two tools. There may be other tools that are a little bit better for surfacing, like Rhino or other ones, but in those two tools, it's not. If I go back here, excuse me. Now something like this, and actually I think I can use this little trick here with the snipping tool. Yeah, so now I can draw on this. So something like this is essentially a cut that goes up. Now you might be able to do something like this inside of Fusion by creating this pattern and then doing a radial, right, a circular pattern of it around the center. But that will only work if this turtle is a perfect circle to start off with. If this were an oval, then you would have to use what's called a pattern on path, and it just wouldn't work. That is just I guess not a limitation, but just something that Fusion is not the best to do. But there is, if I go back here, there is a little bit of hope. I want to show you out there some kind of interesting uses for the sheet metal tool. So sheet metal inside of Fusion was just released into general availability, so it's there as a whole separate workspace for you inside of Fusion. And people, as people do, said, yeah, sheet metal is great, but what else can we do with it? And actually there are some techniques inside of the sheet metal environment that solve a lot of problems inside of Fusion. One of those problems was how to wrap something like text or a pattern around an object. So in the past we could as long as I don't have a cylinder here. Well, I mean something like this, something that's a water bottle. You know, as long as you could project a word straight onto the bottle, like maybe in this one little place, it could pop out. And there were some techniques to make it pop out in a in a nice kind of uniform way, so that the edges were not big, and that the center was not a shallow depth. But if you want to text all the way around, very, very difficult. So something like the sheet metal is actually a solver for that. So let me show you. Let me show you how to find that. If you go to the Fusion design validating documents, so this is the main place where you get help inside Fusion 360, where you can get feedback from Autodesk employees, all of that. If you do a search for sheet metal in the little search box up here, you'll get a whole bunch of things coming out. If you sort by views right here, there is, I believe it was there. I just did this search. Well, there's a couple in here, but it's one here that was started by Phil for everyone that wants a wrap function in Fusion. So this is a great example of people. Let me just go back to the first page here, of using tools that are not meant for one thing to do something. So this is actually a sheet metal pattern like this that has been unfolded and then folded back to create something that looks like that. Super, super easily. All this is just a, in the sheet metal workspace, is just a sketch that has been drawn, like with splines and all of that, and then cut out, but then wrapped and rewrapped. If we go down, something like this is another thing, just a sketch with different extrusions on it that turns into that, right? We've never, ever been able to do anything like that inside of Fusion before. And, you know, again, like this geometric pattern. But this only works with things that work with sheet metal, right? So if you wanted this to be like a weird wavy piece of metal, very difficult still. I want to show you another example of this down here. There's one really, really interesting one that was done. A lot of cool things on this thread, but I want to show you and this is, again, you know, doing the wrap all the way around. That's pretty easy. And actually how to create a kind of a helix all the way around. This is very cool as well. And there's a lot of things you can do with this, but I want to show you very specifically one of these inside of here. Yeah, so something like this. This was created as, you know, something that was done in sheet metal, but it actually bent this shape around a curve. This very, very complex shape. If I can, I guess I can't. You can kind of see that. Inside of Fusion. Another, they said that this person took 5 minutes to create this. Maybe not the design itself, but and that is done in sheet metal, right? So it's a way of bending shapes around around kind of flat bases, but those shapes could be terribly geometric. So I just wanted to let you know is that with the new introduction of sheet metal, I'm not sure if there's any other ones. And then people were doing things like bottles and all of that. With the new introduction of sheet metal in there, there's a lot of unusual use cases you can get, because sheet metal is all about wrapping. And you can do really, really cool things with wrapping and not just bending sheet metal to have it fabricated. So I want to give the people on the visiting live, if there's any questions that you have about Meshmixer, I'm going to take a little water break, and please ask questions. Okay, water break over. Yeah, so thanks, Juliana. Yeah, so the lynda.com, we're very proud to be on there. Both in lynda.com and I guess through LinkedIn, there are kind of the main topics for like Photoshop and all sorts of different tools, and the main ones inside of those are called the essentials. You will have Photoshop essentials. You'll have for mine, Meshmixer essentials and Fusion 360 essentials, and those are kind of the main ones. And then there are other ones out there that show how to do specific things inside of these tools, but the main one that they focus on are called the essentials. And if you just do a search for Fusion 360 essentials or Meshmixer essentials, then you'll find them. But again, they don't have the reference section for Meshmixer, so that's still on our own platform. Yeah. Any other questions from anybody? I would invite you all to ask them. There were also some very good updates for Fusion 360 that happened in the last, I think about 3 days ago on September 13th, about using sweep profiles and being able to like taper and turn sweep profiles. And I know that this was about 5 months ago. Somebody asked about that. Essentially being able to, this would be perfect piece of tape, right? Essentially be able to take a sweep profile, and instead of sweeping it up, you actually be able to twist it as it goes up to create some really cool effects. So that's a new thing inside of the sweep profile. But if nobody has any other questions, I think this will be a 30-minute webinar. And again, I really invite you to ask me questions during the month. If you are a student of these, inside of Honeypoint 3D, and it's an easy question, I usually just answer. And if you especially ask it in the class itself so that other people see that question asked, and then I answer it, it'll actually help everybody. So I really ask you to do that if you have any questions. But otherwise, you can always send me your questions to answer next month. And I just really appreciate everybody who watches live and who watches on replay. And we're just here to help. So again, any requests for new classes or things that I should go over either in the webinars or devote a whole class to, I'm more than happy to do so. So thanks so much, everybody. Sorry, I'm coughing. And I'll see you next month. Bye-bye.